I appreciate it, man. And in fact, I told my wife after I got home that day, this random guy just walked up to me and said, I look good. It was so weird. But it seemed like it came from a good place,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's really ironic that here we are 3-4 months later
Yeah.
talking on a podcast. So my name is actually Rashid Kwejo Ejapon. I came here when I was 16, and Dad thought, like, just to fit in America, we should probably change my name. So he came up with the name John, and he asked me to go find a middle name. And I'm 16. I don't know how you find middle names, so I literally grabbed an American map and started looking. And I found, and I'll show you my driver's license, I found Bismarck, North Dakota. And I chose the name Bismarck.
Oh, that's funny.
And I go to Dad and I'm like, hey, Dad, I found the most amazing name. This guy, he's so amazing. They actually named the whole town after him.
Yeah.
Just made that up. But
Yeah.
now, of course,
It's unique.
it's unique. And back in the day, a guy named Rasheed Wallace,
Yeah.
very big NBA
Basketball,
player. And so I come here and I'm like, hey, Dad, guess what? All the white people are wondering why my name is John. It's not a black person's name.
Right.
I should have just kept my original name.
Right.
But now I'm thinking back and I'm like, how silly that was. I mean, what if I found Walla Walla?
Yeah.
Like, what if I found Puyallup?
Right.
Literally, that would have been my middle name. But that was, my entry into America straight from Ghana, West Africa, to Sitka, Alaska.
So before we get even to you in America, I would love to understand what life was like
In Ghana.
in Ghana. So basically 5 to 15. Most people don't remember before age 5, but
Yeah, but so Ghana, interestingly, was the first African country to gain independence as a colonial country. So we used to be the Gold Coast. And we became Ghana in 1957.
so yeah, I don't know my African history that much.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's a big continent.
yeah,
When most people think Africa, they think it's one country. It's
Yeah.
like, no, there's
Yeah.
lots of countries.
yeah.
But at one point, were there more just broken into certain territories, and then over time they became independent?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a bunch of tribal groups, nomads moving around the continent, and then the European powers came and divided it up, not based on anything, but this is the territory I like. I'm just going to call it this.
Right.
I'm going to call it that. So a lot of the conflict that is still happening in Africa today is, imagine just putting the Germans and the French and the British in one country because they all look white.
Right.
And that's what you have in Africa. A lot of these people were never friends. They were like fighting against each other, and they were all thrown together in one country. So in Ghana, they speak a lot of different languages. And Ghana is actually right in the middle of the continent, right next to, like the equator. So it's Ghana, Benin, Togo, Nigeria.
How many African countries are there?
56.
Okay.
Right. So basically, we are all kind of slapped together there. But Ghana is about the size of the state of Oregon. Oregon has maybe 6 million
Yeah, not a
people,
lot.
but Ghana has 32 million. So that kind of gives you a sense of scale. So to wrap it back to my personal life, I come from a family of 12 kids. I'm number 3. And I was fortunate enough that when I was 16, my dad found this exchange program. And there was a kid in Sitka, Alaska who wanted to go to Africa. And I happened to be the exchange guy. And
So out of the 12 kids, why did they send you?
well,
Did you all make it over
I
to the US?
still, well, so half of us are somewhere. So I have a couple of brothers in Japan. I have a sister in Toronto, another one in New York, a couple in Europe, and we still have quite a few in Ghana. But we all talk on a Zoom call once a month.
Nice.
Unfortunately, my dad passed away, but we were not all from one mom. So my mom was the first mom. She had 2 kids, and the second wife or the second mom. And in Ghana, you can marry more than like one woman in those days.
Yeah.
Not today, but the second wife had like 7 kids, and the third wife had 3 kids. But all 12 of us are very tight because Dad always kept us with him.
Yeah.
No matter what was going on with him and the women.
I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. Did the women get along with each other?
In the case of my mom, when I was 3 months, my dad basically just went to her family and said, I'm not in love with you anymore. And that was it.
So, okay, so there's no...
Yeah, but the second wife also, yeah, like Dad had kids with this, well, the third wife, like Dad had kids with this woman and just brought the kids home. But the second wife was the primary one that basically raised us all.
Mm.
And they passed away 2 years ago, like 60 days apart.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're gone now. But when it's really funny you ask that question of all the kids, why me? Especially since I was living with a stepmom who had her own kids. And why didn't she push them forward instead of me? I can't explain it.
Yeah.
I never asked my dad that question, but I was the one chosen. I have an older brother who's about 6'10". I'm 6'1". I could never compete with him physically. So I decided that the only way I could really compete with him was to study, was to go to school and do well in school. And maybe my dad looked at all of us and said, well, you are the most academically promising one, so I'll send you. So, I arrived in the U.S. and I didn't know a lot about this country. I had never seen a microwave, for instance. I'd never seen
What year was this?
This was in 85.
Okay.
I had never seen an elevator.
Hold on. I still really want to get into quality of life
in Ghana.
For myself to understand better, but just part of the purpose of this podcast is so people can understand what life was like outside of America, because part of the issues with most Americans, thankfully, obviously look at my skin, I've been in other countries, but most people in America don't even know what life is like outside of their county or state, let alone country.
Yeah.
So just help paint a picture of what it was like you lived in a house with probably not 12 bedrooms. So you're probably all sharing multiple bedrooms. And what kind of quality of life did you know? Did you learn English? If you could just break that down a little bit more.
So ironically, my dad only had a 5th grade education. However, this man was wise beyond his years. And even though, and this might surprise you, because he actually built a massive house that had like 15 bedrooms in there.
Wow. So he built a mansion.
Yeah, and that house is still around, and we use it. We use it as we can basically use it for rental because.
So what did he do for income? How would he?
So my dad, from the time I was little, was a mechanic. So he fixed motorcycles initially. Then he went to Japan for a couple of years to learn how to fix Hondas. And he came back and started a Honda dealership.
Wow. So he became successful in that.
According to the Ghana standard, my dad actually did very well.
Yeah.
So he managed to send all of us to school, to some type of a private school. So I grew up in what you will probably call the affluent part of Ghana. But today the average income in Ghana is probably around 15,000, 16,000 a year. And, the average person there absolutely cannot afford to buy a car or a house.
Build a mansion.
Or build a mansion. But, most Africans that you see here are typically not the poor.
Yeah.
They are people who are either middle class or higher. But life in Ghana is typically, you rarely see a homeless person on the streets, even though we're not as rich as the U.S. because families help each other. I mean, family name is very important. Like, for instance, I always, if you watch Lion King, the moment where Simba is taken up on Pride Rock, and he's introduced to the whole tribe, that is a real African thing. We call it outdooring in Ghana. So when I was born, my parents literally held a neighborhood party. You invite everyone 10, 20 blocks down the road, and you feed everyone, you have a big party, and then, this is John. He is your son.
Yeah.
If you see him 10 blocks down the road doing something bad, I am giving you the authority to spank him in the butt and send him back home so I can finish it. So when Hillary Clinton wrote a book about It Takes a Village, I truly understood that
Yeah.
because that whole village raised me.
Yeah.
They all considered me their child, right? So they help each other, even though a lot of them are poor. They never, I mean, the idea of me taking my family name in vain, which is a very serious thing there, like your family name is very important.
Right.
You don't mess with that. And me being homeless there will be a shock because there will be so many families that will be willing to take care of me long before I ever become homeless.
Wow. Yeah, it's one. I mean, there's a lot of issues with our culture here, but one is lack of community with just your neighbors. Like, how many average people here actually have a relationship with their neighbors?
Yeah.
Almost, some of them don't even know their name.
Yeah.
And where you know, with what you're describing is, you don't have a lot of money, but there's wealth in having friendships and community with other people.
Yeah, no, so we are all very tight. Although, I mean, now when I look back, I was extremely fortunate to have grown up in the environment that I did. My dad left us a lot of property now that we're very fortunate to have because he bought it back in the day when it was nothing. And today, the properties are worth quite a bit. So there's still 11 of us. One brother passed away, but we meet, we all get along, like nobody is fighting over anything. But life in Ghana for me was great. For the average person, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
I am.
So you got a pyramid, and at the very bottom is basically the bare necessities, right? You have clothing, food, shelter. I would say most Ghanaians today are still at that level. And if you explain to them that, this government that you have is literally the reason you're in the condition you're in, it will not ring a bell for them because they're literally in subsistence level, just trying to survive that day. So some government that lives in a capital city that's corrupt, that's stealing from them, they can't even relate to that person. But it's true, right? A lot of these African countries get a lot of money to solve poverty, yet they're still poor.
Right.
We have a lot of resources. I mean, Ghana has a lot of gold.
Minerals, yeah.
We have minerals. In fact, they just discovered oil off the coast of Ghana. And yet we're still a third world country. So why are we poor? But if you are in subsistence, existence, it's very hard to see, self-actualization, where in America you start seeing UFOs because food and shelter is not anything you ever have to worry about, right? So anyway.
All right. Thanks for painting that picture. Appreciate it. All right. So you came to America at 16.
Yeah.
You must have learned some English then by that point?
Yeah. So Ghana is a British, because of our history with the British. Actually, let's see, English is the official language in Ghana. So I learned English as a child, but it was British English. So when I came here, I had to learn quite a few things. And I personally, and my story is a very typical immigrant story. And I always tell people who have kids in other countries thinking about bringing them here, my advice, bring them here before they get to college. Okay, I came here in high school and I learned a lot from American kids. The slangs, all this good stuff, what you're supposed to
They have less of a filter.
Yes, and I learned a lot. So by the time I got to college, man, I hit the ground running. I at work, and I'll mention it later in this story, but there was a young lady from China that I was training at work. And I just did a typical thing where we're talking about some stuff. And I guess I made the statement, we can kill two birds with one stone.
She's like, what?
She didn't say anything. She wrote it down. And then a couple of days later, she's going over her notes and she says, John, I have a question for you. So why do you like to kill birds? And I'm like, well, okay, this is one of those things because I came here in high school. Yeah. I picked up a lot of this, just American lingos, American like mannerisms, and I learned a lot. And even though she's been here 10 years, she still was learning all this stuff. So I arrived in Sitka, and it was kind of funny. In a town of about 5,000 people, I was the only black person.
This is Alaska, right?
Sitka, Alaska, so southeastern part of Alaska. So it's not as cold as Anchorage. But, it rains more in Sitka than it does in Seattle.
Interesting.
Believe that or not. I'm the only black person in town, and I'll never forget the basketball coach meeting me and getting very excited. And I was like, why is this guy excited? And I found out later, he's like, well, are you going to show up to basketball practice? And I'm like, what is basketball? He's like, you've never played basketball? And I'm like, no, I play football. And I'm not talking,
soccer.
not talking like pigskin, right? So that was my very first, entry into stereotypes
Right.
and expectations of people. I was, 6'2" at the time, and maybe
It's pretty big at that age for basketball.
yeah, and I was 145 pounds wet, right? I mean, I was skinny. But still, he just saw this black guy and he's like, hey, this is my championship year, right? But I loved Sitka because it was a small town and all the kids had grown up there. But I was the stranger that came into the town, and everyone was very curious about me, and they were very kind to me. It gave me a chance to learn about America without all the pressures of a big city. Right. So,
So did you end up playing basketball?
I actually ended up playing basketball.
Make of a championship?
Well, no, there was no championship, but I because I played soccer, I was really fit.
Yeah, you're just athletic in general.
And I mostly hustled a lot, played a lot of defense, fouled a lot because I didn't know a lot of the rules initially. I actually was good enough to actually end up playing. I sat on the bench mostly at Edmonds Community College, like a few years later.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so love that guy. He's a good guy. But anyway, so I'm there. I'm on a student visa. And this couple visit the family I was living with. I was with my exchange family. And they do what most people do when you meet someone. Hey, if you're ever in town, stop by.
Yeah.
And they lived in Seattle. Well, I knew that with all my siblings back home, if I went back home, that it was going to be tough for my family to take care of me. So I knew that I just couldn't go back home. I need to find a way to extend my visa, but I didn't know how. So I called this couple and I'm like, hey, I kind of need to disappear into the crowd here. Remember you offered me if I was ever in
Yeah, a lot of
town?
times people say something, but they don't actually mean it.
And they're like, okay, John, if you want to, so anyway, I end up in Seattle. And one of
So you're 18 now, or was the program for a year or two?
I'm about 18 and a half, graduated high school. And I grew up in the Assembly of God Church in Ghana. My dad was extremely religious. So it's funny, when I was listening to Lisa's interview, I could really relate to a lot of the stuff she was saying.
Would you say, what percentage of people in Ghana are religious?
I always laugh now. I would say about 60%, 65% of Ghanaians are Christian.
Yeah.
I would say about 25% are Muslim, and the rest are still traditional type, people call it voodoo and all this stuff. There's still 5% that are into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a Assembly of God church, so I know all this stuff. So I show up in Seattle. I have nowhere to live. But I lived with this couple for about 6 months. But I didn't realize that they literally, and you're in real estate, so you kind of know this. They will babysit, they'll house sit while a house is in the middle of being sold. They'll house sit it until the house is sold, and then they'll move to another house that like the real estate company wants now. I don't even know if people do that nowadays.
Yeah, it's not a thing anymore.
This was, over 30 something years ago. So they didn't really have stable housing either, right? So I moved with them to a couple of homes, and then eventually I'm like, I just need to find my own place. So I literally went to an Assembly of God church, and I spoke to the pastor, and he's like, you won't believe it. The pastor that was here at this church for 30 plus years passed away. They lived just a couple of miles down the street, and his widow, a 75-year-old lady, is looking for a young person like yourself who is willing to do the yard work, all the stuff her husband used to do.
Yeah.
in exchange for housing. And
There you
I'm
go.
like, it's a God moment, as I call it. So I go and meet her. Her name was Agnes. I just call her Nana. She actually lived till she was 100 years old.
Wow.
But that woman, when I look at all my stories, everything that's allowed me to be who I am today, I lived with her for almost 15 years and didn't charge me a penny.
Yeah.
I was, I would give her money, I'll buy groceries, I'll contribute stuff around the house, but she made it possible for me to be able to go to school. I started at Edmonds Community College. I got my 2-year degree there, then transferred to the UW, got a bachelor's in finance, and I ended up going to Seattle U to get my master's in finance. So,
I have a question for you. So there's in American culture, there's pivotal moments. Yours kind of was 16 when you came here.
Yeah.
But when you were done with high school, did you have a goal, desire to do or be someone, or you just knew I need to figure out how to stay in America?
That's a great question. When I was growing up in Ghana, I just knew that I had to go to school, but I had because we didn't have engineers. At least I didn't know any engineers.
Yeah.
I didn't know any doctors, didn't know any lawyers. But I knew I had to go to school somehow. In fact, I read the Bible so much, the state of Israel, Egypt. I literally thought that you had to die and go to heaven to be able to go to a place called Israel or a place called Egypt.
Yeah.
So I think it's ironic that fast forward that I ended up working at Boeing for 25 years, building planes, a machine that can take you to Israel, a machine that can take you to Egypt, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just a full circle.
Yeah.
So no, I did not have any aspirations. In fact, the only reason I ended up in a business career, I was dating this young lady who was let's say an accounting major. She was working on her CPA and actually ended up passing. The only way I could spend time with her was if I studied with her. So I'm helping her the
things we do for love.
To basically pass to become a CPA, and I'm like, I can do this stuff. So I actually took the CPA exam. I failed. I didn't pass every section the first time, but the second time I did. Have a CPA, never worked a day as a CPA, right? But that's how I got into business, because of this young lady is the one that got me thinking, okay, this is something I think I can do.
Yeah.
And I got into that.
The reason why I ask those questions is I have a lot of nieces and nephews that are becoming young adults now. And sometimes we forget what it's like to be at that age. And some people feel like I need to know what to do with the rest of my life. And for most people, that's not normal.
Yeah.
Some kids, I've done podcasts with people. I did one with a doctor recently, and she knew when she was 8 years old, she's going to become a doctor. So that was always her guiding principle for every decision she made. It was, I know I'm going to be a doctor. She didn't know quite what doctor until she started that program, but she always had that guiding post. But I find with most people's stories is you don't have to know what the next 10 years is like, but you do have to take the next step. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, is because they lack vision, which is okay, because most people don't have that, I want to be an astronaut or whatever. You still have to keep moving forward. And when I hear from your story, right, no matter which country you're from, no matter what culture you're from, you just have to stay in motion. You have to take the next step, because if you just end up sitting there on your couch complaining about life, then of course you're not going to go anywhere. But you got the whole CPA thing, but you never did it. Yeah. But that's okay. Yeah. Because I'm sure it led to other things.
It helps me. Yeah. No, I mean, I totally agree. In the many years, I know the years I was at Boeing, I was a hiring manager, and not once did I ask someone, well, what school did you go to? And what was your GPA? That was not how I determined if someone was gonna
Yeah. We'll talk about that, because I know there's people that are trying to figure out how to get a job.
Yeah, right. So I come here, and I was, just fortunate in so many ways. When I went to Edmonds Community College, the receptionist, I met her randomly, and she had just lost her husband, and her husband was really a big supporter of education, and she had started an education fund, a scholarship fund. And after I think I'd like to give this to you for the
Wow.
next, for 2 years. And so she paid for my whole time at that school. And then I got a job.
And that's something you couldn't have planned, right?
No.
Because the more
Being at the right place, right time, telling my personal story.
Yeah, the term serendipity, some people use that, but it's just like when you look back on most people's lives, is there situations that occurred that they couldn't have planned, right? Because there's all this whole optimization, like, which is fine, but at the same time, you kind of have the built-in randomness because there are people you're going to meet, experiences you're going to have that will then change the trajectory of your life.
I totally agree, but you have to be at the right place at the right time, and a lot of luck.
Yes.
I think you have to have your hand open. If you always have your hand in a fist, it's very hard for people to come in. I mean, like, you've met a lot of people at the gym. You've not invited everyone to come here, but you chose me. There must have been something that you saw that caused you to invite me. I tend to be a glass half full person.
Yeah.
I believe that. I mean, life is full of amazing things, but you have to make yourself available for that.
Yeah, well,
right.
To be fair, I get a lot of no's.
You do?
Yeah, so it's interesting. There's an age gap between 40 to 60, and I know you're under that. But that's the hardest group for me to break into. Part of it is, and the reason why you're out of it is because you're no longer concerned about what you say affecting your work. And so I understand that age group because it's just like, hey man, I don't actually want to say what I believe or I don't actually want to say what I want to say because it could have negative impact on my life.
Yeah.
Where the age group that I have higher success with is 70 and above. Because at that point it's like, dude, I will say whatever I need to say.
Yeah.
And if it makes someone upset, it doesn't really matter.
Interesting.
I've had decent success with people in their 30s.
Yeah.
Because they at least have 10 years they can go back on as an adult. Yeah. Be like, hey, I went through this hard thing or learned this thing. But that age 40 to 60, they have real life experience.
Yeah.
Most of them are just too afraid to actually say what they want to say.
Well, they have a lot to protect.
Correct. Because there's a guy I met at the sauna. I met a member at the Y as well. And he's a pharmaceutical rep. And he's told me interesting things in the sauna, and I was like, well, I'm not a journalist, but would you actually share what you say on more
podcast.
public? And he's like, no.
Oh.
And so I'll meet people like that where it's like, hey, what you said is super interesting. But they're like, well, I got a job.
I have a house.
Yeah.
I can't put, so I am in a position now where, and I'm fast forwarding, so let's come back to me graduating from Edmonds Community College and being fortunate enough to go to a 4-year college, went to Central.
Were you into fitness at that age as well?
No, so my fitness story is actually kind of a silly story. So I'm 20 years old. My really good friend, he and I are, and he's living at Nana's house too. And I met him when I was playing basketball, right when I arrived in Seattle, and we're really good friends. He's dating this girl from the Philippines that he wants to marry. And this girl, I kind of thought right away that she was a fraud. She was just trying to get U.S. citizenship. Right. Didn't like me, I didn't like her. But one time she basically accused me of insulting her or whatever. And my buddy, who is shorter than me, smaller than me, he was so angry at me, he just shoved me. And I'll never forget, I just went flying like it was a paperweight.
Yeah.
And that was a very pivotal moment for me. I'm like, wow, I'm really not strong at all. I can't believe this guy just shoved me and I just went flying like that. So that was the moment I decided to start lifting weights.
There you go. Yeah, I mean,
it was a silly moment, but that was it.
Yeah, I mean, for most people, you need some kind of motivation, and whatever that motivation is, hopefully it changes over time. And for you, it probably did. But I was just thinking about, so I have 3 boys and a girl, and today I was thinking about not to name names with my kids, but one of the boys he has issues with his sister.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking about that interaction,
Mm-hmm.
and why does the girl act the way she does and the way he does, and why is there conflict there?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, part of it is she's not necessarily trying to be mean,
Mm-hmm.
but she physically just won't be as strong as he ever will.
Yeah.
Right? So as a girl, she has to use words, she has to do other things to feel strong.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a guy, I'm not worried about that.
No.
You know, I'm not worried. There's never been a situation, or if I leave the gym at 10 p.m. at night, where I'm worried.
You're worried, yeah.
Right? But as a girl, if you leave the gym at 10 p.m., you just worked out, but an average dude can still beat up a girl. And so it's not like, it's just we're built different. And so that's something I need to have a conversation with my son, where it's like, you think she's mean, but it's just more of that's how she defends herself. I'm not excusing her for her. She could be nicer, obviously.
Yeah.
But just as a male and a female, no matter what role, if my wife leaves the gym at 10 p.m., that's a real concern.
Yeah.
Right? When I used to run around, I remember one time I went running at midnight. Mm-hmm. Now I look back on it, that wasn't the smartest thing in the world. But again,
as a man, you didn't worry about it.
Yeah. And because I was training for a marathon, I needed to get the miles in. And so I was running out there. I think it was like a 10-mile run. And you know, running around at 12:30 p.m. But I would never let my wife do that.
Yeah.
You know? So I need to have that conversation with my son where it's like, hey, there's unless my daughter just gets into CrossFit and wants to get extremely strong, on average, she will probably never get stronger than me. Or my son, there's a world where they get stronger than me.
Yeah.
You know? So anyways, I was just had that epiphany today thinking about that dynamic.
Yeah, but he also needs to understand that we live in a world where he needs to use his words.
Correct.
Because even though we have strength, there is no place in America where using your strength to get what you want is ever acceptable.
Yeah. But you also want to so Ronnie Coleman was a bodybuilder and a cop, right? And so people would ask him, like, did the bad guy ever try to do anything to you? Well, just look at him. Like, who's going to do anything?
Yeah.
So just by asserting strength avoids conflict, right? And as a man, it's like you have to know that you, by being who you are just going to be stronger than her. So you have to be the better man, right? So that's the next lesson that he learns, is like learning that she looks at conflict a different way than you do, and you have to. You're older, but also, anyways, the male-female dynamic.
Yeah, but someone actually asked me the other day if I've ever been in a fight. I said, never. I always talk my way out.
Yeah.
Right?
You don't want to have to it's not worth the risk.
No. I mean, I've had a guy that I supposedly cut off. You know, he got all mad and he pulled right next to me and he's gesturing to me to stop on the side of the road to fight. And I'm like, really, dude? Just go have a great day. I'm not gonna. Why? We're just gonna park our cars and get into a fist fight? No. So I always try to talk my way out of that, and I think we need to teach boys that in society. People, you can be the smartest guy in the world, but if you don't have social skills, talk yourself in and out of things,
right?
You're really gonna be in trouble. But so fast forward. I'm now at Central Washington. I get my finance degree, and right away, outside of that, I get a job with AT&T Wireless. But
what did they do back then? They didn't have cell phones.
Actually, they did. They were this big brick phones. It's before the flip, right? So if you had a phone, it was really, really cool.
I guess this would have been 90s at this point.
Yeah, this is in the early 90s, right? And so I get a job there, and I do great. Then I decide... As
a sales rep?
No, actually, I was a commissions analyst. So I was one of the folks that managed the retail stores, go out there, make sure they had enough phones and all that good stuff. Then I got a job with Microsoft. After that, at this point, I actually met my wife while I was at it. That's AT&T Wireless. This is 1996, when the Olympics came through Seattle. You know how the torch, they have to carry it through every state. When they came through Seattle, AT&T kind of did a volunteer thing at the Seattle Center. Went there. My wife was working for AT&T Wireless at the time as well, and that's where we met. And we got married, and that's how I actually became a U.S. citizen. Remember, so I was, for the time that
So
I
she was a
represented her,
citizen.
she's actually born in Bellevue. So it's a white woman. So we actually have two kids at 26 and 24. My 26-year-old is a girl, and my 24-year-old is a son. He's actually like 6'4".
Does he play basketball? You know,
He
interest.
says Shaquille O'Neal is very lazy. He just takes his skill and did nothing with it. I mean, Shaq was as big as he was, but he never learned how to shoot like free throws. It's a shame. No, but yeah, so that's where we met. Then shortly after that, I got a job with Microsoft. So Microsoft had just found out that a company named Netscape had beat them to the internet. And they were gonna basically create their own presence. So they wanted to build MSN. And I was one of the original teams that they hired to create MSN from nothing. But my job as a financial analyst was to determine that if they put companies on a website, if they can afford to pay. So my claim to fame is WebMD. I did a report on WebMD, and I literally said, in my report, and my former manager, occasionally when I see him, he still laughs at me about that. He said, "Hey, John, how do you feel about WebMD?" But I literally said, and I didn't, let me say, I think my daughter was 1 at the time, but I remember saying, this is the worst idea ever. There is absolutely no parent who will go on something called the internet at 2 a.m. to go ask if their child is going to make it or not. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. This company will never make it.
Yeah.
I guess that was before I met people like you who actually use the internet for medical advice.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, loved it. But at some point, I was spending so much time. In fact, when I think about Amazon now, that's how Microsoft used to be.
Right.
Like 30 years ago. We used to work crazy hours. Sometimes I would leave home about 5 a.m. and work till midnight.
Yeah.
Crazy hours. But we had a little girl. My wife basically said, hey, I didn't sign up to be a single mom. So I walked away from that career and went to Boeing.
I'm sure they gave you stock options back then?
I had stock options, which I foolishly spent on a couple of...
Because they were probably like, what was it back then? Like,
oh my goodness.
$5?
It was quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
and
yeah.
I love Taco Del Mar. So I bought a couple of them, and they didn't do well. And that's where my stock money went, was buying, some burrito that I loved. Bought a couple. Anyway, so fast forward, I take about a 50% pay cut, and I end up at Boeing. Boeing was a totally different company. Just the lifestyle, just work-life, balance was very good. I only had to work 8.5 hours.
Because they were already established by then, so they weren't...
Oh, yeah. Boeing's been around over 100 years, right? So I got there in a procurement department. As you know, Boeing builds planes, but the people that make the parts to build the planes are all around the globe.
Let me pause you. I was listening to a podcast recently. I like podcasts. Mm-hmm. We'll see who listens to more podcasts.
More podcasts.
We'll have a competition.
Yeah.
But I was listening to one recently when they were talking about Wilbur, the guy who invented flying.
Yeah.
The way it started was he had some medical issue where he was bedridden for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And so he had 2 years just to daydream. Mm-hmm. And one of his daydreams was, if a bird can fly, why can't we?
Yeah.
And so for 2 years, finally he was able to move again. I don't know if you know this story.
No, I don't.
Finally he was able to move again. Mm-hmm. And so for a year, him and his brother tried to figure out how to fly. Mm. And after a year of trying, he determined it's impossible.
Is the Wright brothers? So
yeah. Yeah, he said it's impossible, and it's going to take 1,000 years before we figure this out.
Wow.
Well, a year later, they figured it out, and now we're all flying. So that's a super interesting story that the guy who invented flying, he himself, after trying for a year, thought it would take 1,000 years.
And yet
they figued it out after years.
Art of the possible. Allow your brain to...
But even the guy who tried didn't even believe in it.
Yeah.
1,000 years, and look how much progress we've made since flying.
No, it's
over 100 years now.
Yeah.
Whenever
Boeing, it was even long after. Before, of course, Boeing came in with commercial flight long after the Wright brothers.
Yeah.
Long, you know. But the Boeing company is a great company, great engineering company. I don't worry a lot about flying. I know with all the accidents that
It's such a small percentage, 0.00001.
you compare it to driving.
You're
I
right.
think like driving is
I've been in.
so much more dangerous
I've more likely be in a car accident than I am in a.
than flying. But yet people, I guess, because we lose control, you don't have any control
Right.
over flying. No, but it's a great company. I hope they figure things out. I think what is saving them right now is the fact that they're a duopoly.
Right. They're too big to fail.
Yeah, you only have two, and literally every state in this country has some mom and pop shop attached to Boeing.
Right.
So if you decide to shut them down, I mean, every senator or congressman would say, come on, not the company in my state.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
means
there's
they're not
that, but
going
just
anywhere.
who else is going to make planes? It's
Yeah,
such a
it's-
complicated project.
Well, there are two long lines, right? I mean, so if you leave the Boeing line, you got to go join the like the Airbus line,
Right,
which is even longer.
Which is not a U.S. company.
No, but it's even longer. Like they have over 6,000, 7,000 backlog, and Boeing has maybe 4,000. So if you're number 2,000, why would you leave
Yeah.
that to go join a line that's 7,000?
And the barrier to entry is so high that who's gonna? I guess I think they said China is trying to make a plane, and maybe India.
Well, so actually they already have. It's called Comac, right? So they have their own company called Comac. They're already currently flying the plane domestically. It's the size of the MAX, of the 737. They don't have any big ones like we do and Airbus does. But I definitely think that in the next 15 to 20 years, if not sooner, I can see China having their own very competitive, commercially viable airplane that,
We'll see what the quality's
can
like and
compete.
how long they.
well, which is why they're flying it.
Yeah.
I mean, like domestically now, they're
Right.
willing to kill a few Chinese, but we're not willing to let them come here and come do that to us. And also, I think they're trying to protect the competition, right?
Right.
I mean, if you look at even EVs, I think the company is called
BY.
is BYD or
Yeah.
They have EVs that are better than Tesla.
Yeah.
Today.
And cheaper.
Much cheaper. So the $80,000 Tesla they're selling for about 25, 30.
Right.
But we will not allow them to bring it here.
Right.
So the U.S. government is protecting Tesla anyway. But my time at Boeing was great. I was able to go from a procurement agent. I also did some finance work there. I became a procurement manager at a time when we were building a 787, all the way to the time of becoming a senior manager for warranty, where I managed almost 75 people under me. And at some point, this is a life lesson. I always say you're only as great as your next manager. So your current manager might think you're amazing. Then your next manager, because of whatever reason, they don't.
Did you enjoy playing the corporate ladder game? Did that bother you?
I think because of my personality and all that,
You seem pretty easygoing.
it was very easy for me,
Yeah.
even though it's a very political game where you really need to make sure that you basically network and you have a bunch of leaders protecting you,
Right.
because otherwise you're just like a wildebeest, a baby wildebeest in an African desert. If no one is protecting you, they're going to pick you off.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened with me, where a lot of my protectors retired. And I was having to fend for myself, and I decided to get out of management and become an individual contributor. But the reason, so I'm no longer at Boeing today because after Mr. Trump won and DEI, Boeing was one of the companies that literally said they would do DEI. They were spending a lot of time and money doing this, and they quietly in the middle of the night got rid of that program. And one thing that that your audience might not know about me, I happen to be the president of the Snohomish County NAACP. Okay, so we do civil rights. This is what we do. We are the oldest, biggest civil rights organization in the country. Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King, all of them were part of the NAACP. And I'm part of that history. So, I had a chat with my leadership, how shameful this whole act was. And when it came time, the economy, like Boeing was not doing great.
Right.
Came time to lay off. I was a very easy target, which was actually okay. Because if you look at what's happening in this country today, with, I feel, our very history, like someone like Jackie Robinson, who was in the U.S. Army, his history was deleted. His Army history was literally deleted from the archives. Trump today is going into the Smithsonian, to the African American Museum, and removing stuff that he says are improper ideology. Right? And I'm sitting at Boeing 2 years from retirement, and I'm thinking, sometimes blessings come in uncomfortable ways, like being laid off. But in my case, this was the best thing that could happen to me, because the last 3 years, I've been taking people back to Ghana, where they can literally see where they came from. For a lot of African Americans, they have no clue where they came from in Africa. And it was planned that way. You kidnap someone from Benin, from Togo, from Nigeria, from the Ivory Coast, from Ghana, put them together so they can hatch a plan to escape. So a lot of African Americans today have absolutely no clue which part of Africa they came from. But all the buildings they used for slavery, the artifacts, all the places are still there today. So just this past February, I took 20 people with me back to Ghana. And it was truly an amazing trip. You go there, just imagine that you've arrived, and so we do a naming ceremony. That's just one of the many things that we do on this 2-week all-inclusive trip. Imagine that they dropped you off like the length of a football field. We drop off, and my whole group everyone is wearing white. But in front of us is what looks like an entourage. And there's a band, an African drumming band with teenagers just dancing, walking us to the Royal Palace. But the more amazing thing is the fact even though we're in a town with no running water or electricity, it's almost like someone sent an email to the whole town that we're coming. It was an outdooring, right? Hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 people on the streets just clapping, saying, "Welcome home." Right? And imagine you're an African American who's lived in this country and you don't even know where your ancestors came from. And now you're in Ghana and you're being welcomed home while you walk to the Royal Palace to go get an African name. So, even though I've seen this, I'm the one that planned all this. You see the face of the people experiencing this, and there's no dry eye in the crowd, and you're like, I've been wasting time building planes all this time when I can truly impact people's life, right? So while Mr. Trump is busy erasing African American history, women's history, if you're not a white man, they're erasing your history. What I'm doing is taking people to a place to go see. Because the reason you're able to keep the Jewish story alive is because of Auschwitz, right? You can take people to Germany to go see these things. And once people see it, they can never unsee it. So I think this is my role for the rest of my life. This company that I'm actually just started, a new company, African Audacity Tours LLC.
Nice.
That's my company. I'm doing it. As I talk today, I have, as of yesterday, 73 people on the list that want to go.
Wow.
So I'm going to make a run at this, and I think it'll work. So my work as the president of the NAACP, also taking people back to Ghana, I think, there's a mix, there's something there where there's a synergy, where I'm helping people here whose civil rights might be losing their civil rights. But once I get them, we educate them and maybe take them to Ghana to go see what actually happened there and how they ended up where they are in America today, and why we cannot lose this history. Because once you lose it, then these people are bound to do this again. So, questions?
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think it's cool that when I talk to older guys, when they think about late 50s, early 60s, they're thinking about winding down, making any kind of impact.
Yeah.
And for you, because you took care of your health, because some guy pushed you when you were 20, almost 40 years later, because you took care of your health, you're now able to do this second act. Where most guys, let's say you stayed at Microsoft, you could have easily stayed there and you could have made a ton of money, but your health would have declined. And then I could have met a fat version of you at this age, right?
And I'll never be sitting here.
Yeah. I don't discriminate, but there's a world where you stayed at Microsoft and then your bank account got bigger, but your fat got bigger, and then you're 58 and you couldn't do it because you physically don't have the machine to do it. And so now it's cool that you have this second wind. That you have this energy, you have this desire, and you have confidence to do this thing because hey, I've been successful with these big companies for the past 30 plus years. So this project, it may seem small, but it's going to have such an impact that you're going to make a difference in these people's lives. You've obviously made a difference working at Boeing because it's impacted millions, if not billions, of people who fly planes. But now you're able to see that individual impact. And that's really cool.
And for me, it's sometimes I think I'm going through a very big, obviously and my brain is very wired for corporate America. This is how I think. Getting that paycheck every 2 weeks, I'm addicted to that. But this is a huge paradigm shift for me, right? Getting out of that rat race and get into something that is more. I don't think anything that happens to us is an accident at all. But it's so funny you mentioned the young guy that used to report to me at Boeing. He was maybe 29. And at Boeing, we have you go from level 1. You go from level 1 to level 5. Level 5 is the highest an individual contributor can be. So level 4 is pretty close. But this kid was only 29. And he wasn't married, met this girl, no kids, nothing. They went to Europe. They came back a couple of weeks later. He says, I'm quitting. My new wife and I have decided we don't want kids. We're just going to go travel around the world for a couple of years. And when we come back, we'll find a new job. We'll be okay. And I would never forget just thinking, well, first of all, as a manager, who's going to do his work immediately, right? Who am I going to give this job to? But soon after that, I got this intense jealousy. Thinking, so this guy is 29, very young, very healthy, very strong. He's choosing to flip the story the other way. Like, why should I go sit in a friggin' office for 30, 40 years, turn 65, I can barely walk, I have $1 million, but my back is hurting like hell and I can barely walk. So I'm just going to go enjoy myself now while I still have strength and health, and then go work later. And I'm like, so why did I think I had to go to college, marry, like get the wife, the kid, the white pickets, all this stuff before I can go enjoy it? But you're right, I'm lucky enough that I kept myself in shape so I can do this. And I'm just really excited. I really, when I talk to people, the impact that I'm having on their lives. In fact, this last 20 people that I took, 4 of them wanted to get dual citizenship. So they can stay in Ghana. 2 of them wanted to buy a house there. So they can stay there permanently. So, when I see the work that I'm doing and the impact that I'm having on people, there's a part of me that's disappointed that I didn't do this sooner. Right? It's impactful stuff, the stuff you're doing here, doing this podcast. Your kids are going to look at this one day and say, wow, his daddy wasn't just out there, wasting time. But look at all the amazing interviews that he did and the impact he had on people's lives. So this is, at a young age, you decided to do impactful stuff.
Yeah.
instead of just going to sit at corporate America. I think that you told me that you actually had a corporate
Yeah,
job
I went
a couple of years.
Yeah, my journey was a lot of kids after high school go straight to college.
Yeah.
I did a year of college. I realized this isn't very fun.
For you.
So I did the Army for 4 years.
Wow. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then I got married the last year I was in the military.
Mm-hmm.
Then we started having kids.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have bills to pay,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny. Every time I do a podcast with someone, there's always something in their story that I can understand or relate to. So you worked at AT&T. I worked at Verizon for a few years.
Wow. Okay.
And, that's pretty corporate where they have all their stuff you have to follow. It's not as like the military, you don't ask questions.
Yeah.
You just do what you're told.
Yeah.
And I understand that because potentially someone could die if you don't do the thing you're supposed to do. So I understand why you want that much rigorousness, right? I did try to start a company when I was young, but when you're young, you need a lot of, you always need mentors, but when you're extra young, you need that help.
Yeah.
You can't expect to do it on your own. And so that failed, obviously, because it's like, hey, you didn't know what you're doing, and B, you didn't ask anyone for help. So then it's like, all
You
right.
have the foresight to ask for help.
Yeah. So then you work at Verizon where you get lots of help. But then, like you said, you're working for someone else. You have to play the games. They're changing the commissions. Someone like you's adjusting the commission rates. And
Yeah, that was my job.
the way it worked there, where it's like your commission was based off of last year's performance.
Yeah.
So if you did really well last year, this year you have to work even harder. And it's just all these games you have to play. And then
Rat race.
they're constantly changing the metrics. And you're like, well, last month you wanted me to do this. And so some people, once they understand the game, so eventually I understood the game. And so I learned how to manipulate the game. And they didn't like that.
Yeah.
But what was funny, right before I left, all the things that I did, they then made it part of the metrics. So it's like, you literally got mad at me.
That guy, yeah.
You literally got mad at me for doing it this certain way, but I just understood the game. And then eventually they made that the thing. And you're just like, oh my goodness. So thankfully I was able to exit the rat race at age 29 or 30.
Wow.
And then have been working for myself since then. And now a new development is now I'm completely going independent, which is a whole new territory for me. But I'm glad I'm able to do that at this age. We all have our own separate journeys and whatnot, but I'm just excited to see you take your journey. Because again, I encounter so many people in their 50s that maybe have dreams, but they just simply can't do it because they physically can't do it.
Yeah.
There's a guy, I don't know if you ever go into the sauna.
Right.
That's probably my favorite part of the gym.
Yeah.
That's like the dessert. Like,
do the hard work, then go to the sauna to kind of wrap it up.
But the sauna, like, obviously there's health benefits to it, but then I end up having really interesting conversations. And that's kind of where this whole thing birthed. Because I would talk to some guy in his 70s and, the way he views life is very different than me because he's just in a different phase in life.
Yeah.
And I end up having, like, really interesting conversations in there. And I was like, well, maybe I should do this. I already enjoyed listening to them.
You might as well just put it on there.
Yeah. So why don't I try to find people that are willing to have a dialogue? I'm sure there's different viewpoints that we differ on, and that's totally okay. Because I think as a culture, we become so divisive where it's like, if I disagree with one thing, then I just can no longer interact with that one person, which is far from the truth because we have way more in common than we have probably not in common, right?
Yeah.
Because there's stuff I could learn from you being a dad, and I'm curious, did you have a boy and a girl?
Yeah.
I'm curious, was your relationship with your boy and girl different?
Yes.
And that's when I talk to dads about that, they'll be like, the way I love my daughter is different than the way I love my boys. Because I'm preparing, the world is cruel, and I'm preparing both the genders, but more so for the male. Like, no one's gonna come save you. You're gonna have to go out there and figure this out. Or with the daughter, it's a little bit more loving. It's a little bit more like, hey, I understand in America that the power dynamics are changing, and we're having these girl bosses, but that's not everyone's route.
Yeah.
How is your relationship now with your kids?
Well, so that move that I made from Microsoft to Boeing was because of my daughter. She was very little at the time, and I was intentional. I wanted to spend a lot of time with her.
Right.
And that has paid off big time.
Nice.
So my daughter and I are very tight. In fact, this last trip that I took back, I took her with me. She currently works in Seattle.
Is she married?
Nope, she's a social worker.
Is she interested in getting married?
Maybe someday, but it's not the biggest thing
Not in a rush.
on her horizon. But she's just a very, very good person. I mean, she's a social worker. She always wants to be helping people. In fact, she works for a company called Gen Pride, let's say Generation Pride. So these are elderly queer people, people who have been hidden in closets for however many years, and now they're 70 and 80-year-old people who are coming out, right? And it's like, oh, like welcome to the world now. These are the people that she's providing social services for. And she's just a very compassionate, kind person. And that is what I want, if she is happy and she's in a world where she's helping people and she's, at the end of the day, she has to be able to live with herself. She was one of these kids that was really a godsend. Like when she was little, most kids, it takes them 12 to 13 weeks to sleep through the night. My daughter slept through the night at 6 weeks. Never looked back. She never took a pacifier. She had straight A's through school. I mean, she was brilliant. And I'll never forget when my son came along, and my son was the exact opposite of that. He never slept through the night. Even at 4 years old, he was still coming to our room.
You're like, dude, figure this out.
Yeah, like you'd be sleeping in the middle of the night, you wake up and he's just standing there. And it's like, dude, you just scared me, right? But they're very different. Like my daughter is very shy, very loyal. My son is the life of the party. He's an amazing guy. I always used to tell his teachers, just give him a minute. He's going to be a great adult. He just has to grow through this childhood stuff, right? But literally, he's just very, very different from her, right? Very different. He's still living with us, trying to figure out his whole thing. He doesn't think college is for him.
Does he come work out with you?
No.
He's not interested in it?
He's tried a few times, but the gym is really not for him. There are people that don't do gym. They'll do home exercise, they'll do whatever, but the gym is just... But I've always been a gym animal. I just love the gym. I reserved 15 to 30 minutes just for talking. Because people will talk to me.
Well, sometimes my wife, especially now that I do the sauna, she's like, why does this whole thing take you 2 hours? And it's like, well, you work out, and then you'll end up having a fun conversation with someone, and then you go to the sauna. Like, there's times where, like, I go to the sauna, but then I'm coming towards the end of my time, but someone interesting comes in, and it's like, either I can get a headache, or stay in, and I'll have like a cop come in, or a firefighter, or someone just with an interesting career.
You just talk to them.
Or I'm just like, where else? If you go to a coffee shop, you're not just going to randomly go start talking to someone because they're there to do whatever. But yeah, if my wife's like, why is this thing, like, I'm not even lifting that long. It's like maybe 45 minutes. But it's all the other things. It's a social event.
No, but it's your me time, right? Because once you get home, the kids, your wife, the work, this is the only time you get that you can say this is your time, right? No, but so now that I'm semi-retired, that's what I call myself now. I'm semi-retired. I'm home. I wake up 8, 9 o'clock, and I casually stroll into the gym, go do my workout, get home, answer a few emails. I have a marketing director who is mostly getting my customers for me, but it's like, wow, I can't believe this, especially when you're so wired to go to work from 8 to 5 for 40 years. You don't just turn that off. So literally I've woken up in the middle of the night about 2 or 3 in the morning. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a job. It's like, calm down. You're okay. You're still being paid they pay me severance. And all this good stuff. So I'm actually in a very, very good position. I'm surprised I didn't do this sooner.
So you mentioned you were a hiring manager. So what are some interesting stories or just tips for someone that is not just Boeing, but just you as a hiring manager? Let's say I'm I want you to hire me. What are things that you look for, or are like, hey, here's some red flags that right off the bat I knew. Obviously, your job isn't to judge people, but you've done it enough where you probably kind of know as you walk in that first few minutes, this isn't going to work or this is.
Well, so Boeing actually made it really tough to hire. The reason why is they were trying to make it fair, which is what we all want, is fairness. But you, like Mike Tyson, who has like tattoos on his face, could walk in. And so Boeing had a formal interview process, which means they had like 7 or 8 questions. You had to ask everyone the same question.
Yeah.
But I'm like, dude, the guy just walked in with a tattoo on his face.
Yeah.
And I'm just dying to know why does he have that tattoo.
Ask.
But I can't.
Because everything's recorded, I'm assuming, as well.
Yeah. But I'm like, but if you ask him about the tattoo, he might tell me something that is the reason why he's unique and why he might be uniquely fit for this job. But I could not ask that question.
Yeah, that's part of the whole corporate world.
Oh, and it drove me crazy. But now they're kind of changing that a little bit. But they were very much into the, like what was the situation? What was the action that you took and what was the result? So all the questions has to fit into that. But for me, I always say that you can train almost anyone to do the job, but you want someone that is, a team player. You want someone that can get along with other people. You don't want a jerk. You can never train jerk out of someone. The imbecile, the guy that walks in and thinks he's the blessing to corporate America.
Yeah.
You can never train that out of that person. So I'd rather get someone that doesn't know anything, that's open, that's willing to learn. And I think you can easily teach almost anyone anything. So I'd rather go for that. But for me, the education, where you went, all that stuff, just get to college, just get some education and show up. Because even though I have a finance and accounting background, the job that I ended up doing at Boeing for almost 25 years had nothing
to do with the degree.
Nothing to do. Yeah. So just get the degree.
Right.
Okay, it doesn't matter what. I mean, my daughter was all stressed out about going to the University of Washington in Seattle. I'm like, girl, it doesn't matter. Why don't you live at home, go to UW-Bothell. That's like 10 minutes from our house. I'll pay for your school, But no. She had to go to UW-Seattle, go live on campus, do what all the other kids are doing. By the end of the day, I don't think it really mattered.
Yeah.
She got the job. They didn't say, oh, because you went to UW-Seattle, we're going to pay you $10,000 more.
Yeah, it's
they
like
never say that.
None of my clients have ever asked me.
Yeah.
And I always tell my kids this. I was like, no one's like, even when I went to college, they didn't even ask me about my high school transcripts because they didn't.
Because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, we tell kids to jump through all these hoops, and it's like, and I think things are changing now in 2025, where I believe in learning. Right? I've learned more now in my 30s than I have in my 5 years of college. I mean, I have 2 masters and I have a bachelor's, but it's like I know way more practical stuff now.
Which serves you well.
Yeah, because I want to go learn stuff that, like, I just finished an 8-hour book on calories. And it's like, well, why would I learn that? Because it's actually useful information that I can apply to my life, but also because as a nation, we struggle with obesity.
Yeah.
And so I want to be able to articulate to people in such a way like, hey, this is why you are where you are. And if you want help, you can go pay some professional, or I can talk you through it so you can better understand that. But another question I like to ask people, I don't ask people if they have regrets, but what is knowledge that you've learned later in life that would have been helpful to have known or understood that you could have applied earlier?
Wow. So that is a great question. I think one of my biggest regrets is not teaching my kids more about my African culture. I think it was a very typical immigrant thing. The first generation immigrants that come here, they left something. That's why they come to their new country and they do the full assimilation. In my case, I assimilated so well that I forgot even how to speak my native language, which is Ashanti. I totally forgot it. So when my kids were growing up, I didn't teach them that at all. And I just took my daughter to Ghana. And she's like, gosh, it would have been nice if I could speak this language. So it's a big regret on my part. So if I had any advice for immigrant parents, speak your native language at home. Insist on it, because that kid is going to learn English at school. All their friends are going to speak English. When they go to school, all they're going to speak is English. But speak whatever native language you know to your kids and assimilate your culture into that kid, because we really cannot lose that. I think that's what makes us all unique. And my daughter, you'll find out as the kids grow up, they'll want to go back to your mother tongue and say, how come you didn't teach us that? How come you didn't teach us that culture? So that's definitely one of my big regrets. But it's not, I've gone back and I'm speaking my native language now, which I try to teach my daughter, but I mean, she's 26 now. It's kind of too late. At your kid's age is when you should be picking up this kind of languages, but that's one of my biggest regrets. It's assimilating too well. I wish I hadn't.
Yeah, that's fair. 40s for me is just around the corner. And what is some, whether it's health or just things that changed for you in your 40s versus when you were like in your 20s?
Oh man,
I know that was 20 years ago, so that's hard.
No, but I'm 56, right? I'll be 57 in July. But I loved playing basketball. And you said you were running. I think one of the things I told you is I've done 32 marathons.
Wow. You still do them?
No. So currently, when I'm not doing NAACP and I'm not running my new business, I'm a soccer referee. So I did all those marathons. But one thing I learned.
What was your fastest time?
Oh my goodness. So I think little under 2 hours. I would say maybe 1:57.
That's fast.
Well, I mean, I'm tall with long legs.
Wait, no. Half marathon or full marathon?
Oh, wait. No.
Under 3 hours, I could see. No one's ran faster than 2 hours.
No. So wait, for my half marathons.
Okay, I was like, whoa.
For my half marathon, I'd say it was an hour and 37 minutes.
That's fast.
For my full, it was I think my fastest was 3.49. So 3 hours and 49 minutes.
Yeah, so I did 2 marathons, 3:30 for both of them.
Yeah.
I wanted to break 3:30. The second one, I didn't prepare to hit the wall.
Yeah.
So when I hit the wall, I just slowed down too much.
Like around 20.
It's always around 20 to 22.
Yeah.
And I hit the wall, and I just hadn't mentally prepared for it. And so I slowed down too much, and then because the last mile I sprinted pretty much. I was like, I had the energy, I just
a mental. You're asking yourself, why are we doing this? We're not going to win this race. Or why are we?
It wasn't even that part. It was just more like.
That's what I used to say to myself. Yeah.
The halves, my best was 1:30.
1:30. Okay.
And I wanted to break 1:30.
Yeah.
And then I just.
So you're pretty fast then. I mean, you're built for this. Your ligaments are built for this.
Yeah. I don't care about those distances anymore.
Well, same here.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't run, but refereeing. I mean, last year I did 378 games. And I'm doing all the way from 8-year-old kids all the way to 60-year-old men who still think they can play soccer. But at that point, you're just doing...
You do this through like the school or the Y or...
Well, I do high schools. I do some community colleges, and I also do a lot of club teams. So today I have a game at Archbishop Murphy.
Oh, nice.
They're playing Everett High School.
And I think that's, just hearing your story, I think a mistake a lot of men make is they only get decent at one thing or good at one thing. Or it's like, you can live that life, but I think it's worthwhile having multiple different, I don't know if the word's purpose, but hobbies. Because I'll talk to men. Like I met this lawyer beginning of this year, and real estate guy, and I was like, so what do you do for fun? Nothing. And I was like, you don't have any hobbies or any passions? Or I'll talk to this guy at church, and I'm like, what do you do for fun? He said, making love with my wife. And I was like, like, cool, but like, what else? And so I meet so many men that they just don't do anything else other than their primary thing. So it's like I don't identify myself as a property manager. It's like that's just one of the things I do.
Yeah.
But I have all these other. I find men that, again, you can do whatever you want. It's your life. But if success leaves clues, and so I look at other men and I see the men that generally have done other things. Not every part of your life has to be optimized. Not every part of your life has to be like this. It's just like have moments in your life where you're just, it doesn't have to be for financial gain.
Yeah, and Boeing actually used to have a graph because this is when they had a pension plan. They don't anymore, but I have it. But basically, they showed that people who had worked at Boeing for over 30 years, almost the entire career at Boeing,
Died the next year.
Retired, only collected 18 months of their pension checks.
Because they died.
Because they literally went home and sat on the couch, probably watching Fox News, right?
Yeah, or CNN.
Right? Or CNN. I hope they're not watching Fox News. But they literally went and sat on a couch and died 18 months later. That was all they collected.
Yeah.
Imagine working.
Because that's a whole other conversation. The whole point of pensions, the reason why they were okay with it was because they didn't expect people to live long.
To live that long. But if someone like me lives to 90, which I hope I don't, I really don't want to live that long. But, I don't even know if Social Security was intended for people to live that long.
No, so the whole point of Social Security, again, people back then when it first started didn't live very long. So it's like my mom's dad, right? He died like shortly after he stopped working, which was like back then, late 50s, early 60s. So it's like, of course, let's have a pension for people because they're not going to live
by
long.
60.
I did a podcast with a guy, a cop. I don't think it's quite the case anymore, but he was a police officer for the city of Miami. Worked his way up, I think eventually like chief or whatever. But he did his 20 years, retired at 48, and he's never worked again.
Wow.
Never.
Good for him.
Because from day one, he was able to pull a pension.
Yeah.
It's harder to do that now. But again, they didn't expect dudes, like he's in his 70s now. So he's
to live that long.
They're like, dude, can you die already?
For 22 years, right? 22, wow, or longer.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I was actually surprised. My son is thinking about becoming a police officer, and the city of Everett, they start him at 94, 95.
Make good money around here.
Yeah, and the second year, because it's union, like 110, 115, and then they make about 130 after that. I'm like, it took me like 20 years to break six figures.
Yeah.
And this is where they start people nowadays. So, but no, so it's pretty cool. But anyway.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And I look forward to seeing you at the gym and seeing where you are in even 5 years.
Yes.
Because the growth that you have from the business and all that, and I know it'll go as well as you expect it to, and
thank you,
and it'll be exciting. So
I appreciate
you doing this with me.
Appreciate it, Josiah. Appreciate the time, and if you're listening, I appreciate your time. I know you have so many more things to do.
So last question I have.
For you have the last question after you shook my hand.
Kids are going to see this, or great grandkids, and that's one of the reasons I did this is. Me and you are going to be gone someday, and people that are related to us who know nothing about us, this may be like a chance where they get to see. So what's advice you want to give to your great grandkids who you may never meet? What's something you want them to know about you or be inspired by? Or
Well, I actually saw a T-shirt that I loved, the words on the T-shirt, and I've lived by that forever. It said, "Do something today that your future self will be proud of." Right? So that we did as young people, as I did as a young man. Wow. That young John was really brilliant for doing all that work for us.
Right.
Right? So do something today that your future self will be proud of. And that is what I always try to live by. Wherever I go, I try to leave that place better. And always assume that my reality today is just as real for you as it is for me. So just because we don't agree politically or we don't agree on some topic doesn't mean that, that there's something wrong with you. That doesn't make you defective. that my reality is just as real as it is for you, right? So we need to give each other a lot of grace, a lot of mercy, a lot of understanding, and let's keep talking, because the moment the talking stops, a lot of bad things can happen,
Right.
and we really don't need that. So live by that, and this will be a better place. So that's it.